if you're doing cutbacks, that just creates environments and foster environments for more of that to happen. And that worries us very much. So, but we need to first look at what went wrong in these instances and what's regressing. Why is, and we're hearing actually that from one or two other families that they're saying that this is flagrant in the system, but we don't know that until we've looked at that. So that's why, in part as well, we want to hear from other people.
Police report on this? Did you get an account from police?
No, no.
Did you ask for an account from police?
We've spoken with the police once on this incident, but again, we were just trying to understand what happened. We are going to be requesting records from the police as well to see what happened. But again, I think that really bringing the police into all this seems to be a little silly because, again, we don't see that they were necessarily at fault here. And I think that it's deflecting blame and not really addressing the real issue. The incident happened on the property of the school. So, if you or I owned a property, we had a party or an event at our property, we'd be responsible for guessing what happened on that property. If they can order the cuffs to come off, for example, in any situation, why could they not order to make sure that those cuffs don't go on? And why would they really need to involve the police in the first place? Those are the real questions. But we can't answer those or get clear answers on that until we see what's in the records.
I was just suggesting that you go to the police just to give yourself a better understanding of what happened and the context.
We did speak to the police, as I mentioned, but they're going to be somewhat restrictive, and we had to. There's a formality of which we had to request certain things to understand. The police now are feeling somewhat defensive, and we understand that. And so that makes it more difficult for us to try to have discussions without people feeling defensive. We need people to stop reacting and start responding, so we can really get to the brass tacks of what really went on and what happened. So we have approached the police, and we will be making a more formal request to the police, but we haven't made a formal one yet.
Happened, and it's obviously a very emotional time. I'm just wondering
Absolutely.
how the family is doing in all of this, the parents who have to deal with this day to day.
It's been very difficult for them. As she said in her statement earlier, it's been stressful for Daniel, and it's stressful for them. And they're doing their very best to cope. Daniel has some really wonderful grandparents. One of them who's standing with us here today, who's supporting the family as much as they can. So they do have the supports, and they have the supports of other people like us who are doing what we can to help. But understand that Daniel was used to a routine being in school, and now he's out of that school and out of that routine while all this is being sorted out. And no matter what we do with him, it's not going to. It's not going to change anything until he's back in the school, really. So I want to put it in that context. So.
Any other questions?
What should have happened that day? What would have been the ideal scenario to deal with that situation, the escalating situation?
Again, it's hard to speak to that when we don't have all the facts, and to be fair to everybody on both sides, I can't. And I'd like to respond to that, but I can't.
And what would be the ideal scenario from this point, other than getting the records?
Other than getting it, would be the ideal scenario in what? I'm sorry.
What would you like to see happen right at this point?
Well, we'd like to see Daniel transition back to school, but again, we can't do that. As some family have said, they're very worried about, their child's safety, and that's what this is all about. What's paramount is the safety of our children in these schools. That we want to make sure that when we entrust a school or institution with care and control of our children, that they're safe. And when we see these incidences, we start to question things, and that's serious. That's very serious. We all should be concerned.
We know that there's been cuts to all sorts of budgets and things like that. Is this maybe a case of lobbying for some more money to go back to these schools so they can put strategies in place to deal with situations like last month?
I think we had to take a closer, like as I said earlier, we need a national strategy. I think people and certain organizations probably feel quite strained. A lot of the disability groups in this country are struggling to survive right now and to provide the support and advocacy they do to each of the individuals and the families like these. So to answer your question, I think that we need to not just look at one group. We need to look at everybody, how they're funding things and how that's being allocated and how much transparency is going on. I don't know. I mean, I have to wonder, is the school board being completely honest about why they're doing these cutbacks? I mean, part of their comments was they wanted to focus more on the more vulnerable. I mean, how do you quantify or qualify a group of disabled people and say this part of the disabled group is more vulnerable than another, and so we need to put more concentration and attention. Then if you do that, then you neglect this other side, and what happens to them? And are we going to all be standing here facing another incident like this? I don't know. So there's right now a lot of people are not really communicating. There's a lot of great programs. We have legislation and all kinds of things in place, and we can talk about accommodations. But at the end of the day, what it needs to be about, the focus needs to be about proper accommodations, and then how do we sustain those programs realistically without breaking the bank. But it's all a matter of us sharing and allocating those resources. And I'm not sure there's a real structure and sense about that. And again, we don't have a national strategy on this on any level when it comes to disabilities. And that's one of the things that we need to be focusing on, I think, in this country.
So when can you expect the records?
Good question. We would hope the school board and the school will want to cooperate and not frustrate this request. But again, it's not up to us. We can only do what we can do. How the other side responds is at our control.
So in the meantime, what are the next steps then before you get the documents?
In the meantime, we will look to see what supports we can try to put in place with Daniel and his family and the other families that we're working on if they're in need. To try to keep things, how will I say, going smoothly as we can until we get to the point where we can make that transition that needs to happen with Daniel, for example.
So ideally, if one of these strategies comes in place in the future and a similar incident happens, what should be the response of the school?
Well, the response of the school should be, we're hearing from a number of parents saying that they're not getting full disclosure of the documents and the care and control of what's happening with their children. Some families include, have also complained that they're not being as intimately involved with their child's care as well, and that's a concern. So parents need to be informed. They have a right to be informed. That's their children. That's their flesh and blood. And to deny them any such request is absolutely unreasonable and as far as I'm concerned, illegal. They have a right to access those records. So I think, number one, the schools and school boards need to be completely transparent with the families. They need to make sure that the families are completely and fully engaged in the care and control of their children and what's going on. And these programs can't be just universally applied. There are universal aspects, but it has to be tailored to each child because, again, it depends on the level, the spectrum that those children are on when it comes, for example, to autism, will depend on what kind of their needs are, right? So that's what's important. And also, that when you're looking at a situation, making sure that things are in place, though, that we're not setting these kids up for triggers, where their behavior is going to be escalating out of control or there's going to be issues. And we do want to make sure, we are concerned about the kind of training staff are getting because if you don't have what's happened in institutional child abuse cases in this country and abroad around the world, we study this, is there haven't been enough properly trained people and resources, and those people don't understand or not educated enough. They become frustrated, they react, and sometimes they react physically or otherwise, or they do just what's second thought rather than really thinking about what they need to do. And really, if someone's properly trained, that all comes with part of that equation. So
You also said there was a fund set up to help with the legal fees.
we're setting up a fund for the family here because lawyers are not free. No matter if you're litigating, because even if you lose, then the risk is the other side can say, well, we want our costs. And that's the risk. So there has to be a retainer. There has to be something set in place to secure that. And often the lawyers in this case want to know some way they're going to be compensated for their time and such. So
how are you setting up the fund?
well, we're looking at crowdsource funding. That's one of the things that we're looking at right now. And we hope, later time when we're able to make that announcement that you folks will be around for us to make that announcement so we can get our message out to people, let them know they can support the family.
Great. I guess we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.